Hello, right, this is the first in a series of short videos on how to teach various different concepts using models. This is something that I've been using over the last year, and it's been very effective with engaging students in potentially difficult or boring topics. Right, today I'm going to look at how we can go through and teach about the electrolysis of aluminium. We'll go through the stages. I'll talk about different things that you need to think about and how to set it up and such forth. So we start off, you need to make sure that you've got all of your bits cut out, labelled up well in advance. Right? And in the case of electrolysis of aluminium, you need something to represent the container that it's being done in and the two positive electrodes that you're going to have going into it. It's worth thinking about the colours that you're using because they need to be able to stand out to students, and after you've gone and set it all up and talked your way through it, it works really well to get students to take a photo of what you've done and worked through and then use that photo to go and produce a diagram or produce their own model of it. Right, one of the other key points is to make sure that once you've got all these stages and your things printed out, have them sat there in the correct order so you can go and talk through them straight away. Right, in this case, I've just set it up on one table. You might want to set it up over two tables together so you've got a bit more space to come and bring students to you. Once all of the students are set round, be mindful of who they stood near. Make sure that two students that are going to mess around with each other aren't stood near each other. In the whole, I find that 95% of the time you don't get any issues because you'll have the students that close to you that generally they won't be able to mess around. So with the electrolysis of aluminium, the first thing that we need to talk about is the fact of what electrolysis is. So electrolysis is how we break up ionic compounds using electricity. Right, at this point here, it's an ideal chance to go and question students about ionic compounds, making sure that you're pulling out of them that ionic compounds are made up of ions, and ions have charges. Remember, I continually talk about the fact that opposites attract. The second thing that we need to go and talk through is where the aluminium oxide comes from. So you talk about the fact that it comes from bauxite. Question students on what ores are, because this often comes up in exams and they often forget it. At this point as well, you might want to use the ions that you've already cut up to go and set up what the molecules actually look like, and then show them what they break up into after you've passed the electric charge through. The third thing that I talk about is the fact that we go and we mix cryolite into it. This provides an opportune moment to remind students about catalysts. As cryolite, it doesn't actually get used up in the reaction, but it lowers the melting point. At this point, depending on your class, you might also want to ask them about why economically lowering the melting point is advantageous. Right, the next thing that we do, we talk about our electrodes. So you talk about the negative electrode, question students about, right, so what makes it a negative electrode? Right, make sure that you've got a nice big pile of circles to represent electrons handy that you can go and spread through it. So it makes it really clear to them that the thing that's making it a negative electrode is the fact that it's got electrons running through it. Once you've talked about the negative electrode, talk about the positive electrode, remember, ask students, right, so if it's a positive electrode, is it going to be giving ions electrons, or is it going to be pulling electrons off the ions? Right, we can then go and move on and talk about what charges different atoms get. Right, so you need to let them know that your aluminium is going to get a charge of +3, the oxygen is going to get a charge of -2. You can ask students about why they get those charges. So relate it back to their atomic structure, the amount of electrons they've got in their outer shell. Right, you can also, depending on your group and where you are, go and talk about it in terms of building up those ionic compounds and the fact that the charges need to even out. So because we're getting a charge of technically +6 from the 2 aluminium and -6 from the 3 oxygens, that comes out with a neutral charge. It's important to make students and remind students of this point. We can then go and talk about where the aluminium moves to. Right, remind the students again about opposites attracting. So we talk about the aluminium moving down towards the negative electrode. We can talk about the fact that at the negative electrode, how many electrons do the aluminium atoms need? Right, so question the students about this. Right, so you've got your nice big pile of electrons, so you can show them this is going to go and grab 3 electrons. We can talk about the oxygen moving towards our positive electrode. At the positive electrode, you can go and show them that that oxygen is going to lose 2 electrons. Right, it's also worth questioning the students at this point about what's going to happen to these graphite electrodes, the positive electrodes, when oxygen reacts with them. Right, so it's an ample opportunity to get students thinking about different reactions and thinking out of the box. Right, to finish off, because I'm lucky enough to have tables I can write on, go through your 2 half equations. Right, remind students about the oil rig abbreviation and really pull out of the students that high level concept about where the equation is coming from and what's actually happening. Right, I hope that this video has been helpful. I'll be trying to go and put on a few videos a week at the moment. Follow the link below to the lesson that I've got that includes this demonstration. Right, thanks for watching.